our first topic of the episode is going to be talking about the Brooklyn Nets, their big three. They made their debut against the Cavs, and they lost and gave up 147 points to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Colin Sexton went off. He dropped 40 on them. What were your thoughts about their first game together? I'll start with you, Jack.
Well, I know it came in a loss, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. I shouldn't say surprised, more so impressed on how the three of them work together. I know a lot of people, maybe just saw the box score or saw highlights, and people complained about how many shots Kyrie took. But if you watch the game, Kyrie was on fire the whole night. Like, he was hitting. His box score didn't look as great because towards the end, he missed a couple shots in double overtime. And I'll get to why that happened. But I really like the way the three of them work together. I thought one thing Steve Nash did well was handle the rotation of the three of them, spacing their minutes, between the three of them, having one of them on the floor pretty much at all times. And that's the way it should be done. I don't think the roles are that big of an issue. KD, we know he can be unselfish. He was in Golden State, and he was the other night, and he still got 30 because he can do it all. He's the greatest scorer of all time, in my opinion. He makes everything look easy. It doesn't matter what the role is, he fits it. James Harden has not only taken on the role of that distributor, pure point guard, he's almost done it to a fault, and I think he's trying to show, like, he's not selfish at all in this situation. He wants to win a championship, and he's willing to sacrifice anything for it. And I think over time, you'll start to see him picking and choosing his spots. But he only had 2 shots at halftime on Wednesday. So, it's a feeling out process. He's trying not to be selfish, and, it's taking him out of situations where he should be trying to score. And Kyrie, he came back his first game, and he did what Kyrie does. He didn't miss a beat. He was on fire. And then obviously you get to the double overtime period, and he had no legs. But it does not concern me, their 3 roles. A lot of people were going crazy, but I think that's the least of their worries right now.
Oh, you want me to go next? It's the first game of them together, so I'm not going to sit here and overreact to it. I will say, granted, the Cleveland Cavaliers are one of the best defensive teams in the league, so it's good that you see the Nets score a lot of points on them. But at the same time, like Jack said, people were on Twitter ranting about James Harden not taking enough shots. And I feel like if they watched the game, they would have noticed everything was in the rhythm. Kyrie was just hot. KD was hot at one point. So Harden, he felt like he didn't need to do that because it would have messed up the rhythm of the other players. And let's be honest, Colin Sexton just had a day. He just had a day. It's not going to happen a lot, but he just had one of those bright spots where he just got it going. It didn't matter who was on him. KD, Kyrie, Harden, he just was on fire that day. So I'm not going to overreact to it. It was the first time they played. You've seen good signs. You can definitely see that Harden is going to take the playmaking role. He's going to be the point guard, and Kyrie's going to be more of the scorer. With KD also, he's going to be a scorer. So like he said, Steve Nash with the rotations and the way he handled their minutes, it was good. So it was good signs. The only bad thing from a first game, obviously, is it's not even the defense, it's the lack of effort. I feel like the Nets didn't put too much effort. They walked into that game and was like, well, Cleveland is Cleveland. They probably looked at what we all looked at. They're the worst offense in the league. Darius Garland isn't playing. Kevin Love isn't playing. We don't need to take it that serious. We just can score 30 apiece and we'll win. So I think that's what's been lacking from the Nets all season when they play bad teams. If you notice the record, they've beat all the good teams that they played, and they've lost to teams like the Hornets and the Cavs and the Hawks, who aren't that good at the point they played them. So it's just about lack of effort. If once the Nets get it going, I think they'll be okay. I would say that the minutes that Kevin Durant played, 50 minutes, Harden played big minutes, I think it's too early in the season for them to play that many minutes, especially when you need them late in the season in prime time. So I think that's something he has to look at. But no, I won't overreact to it.
So the Cavs are the Cavs. That's one. Colin Sexton did have a day, but the Cavs are still the Cavs. The Nets are going to beat them tonight with Harden and Kyrie with no KD. For me, nobody should be overreacting over this game, and I'll tell you why. The Heat's big 3 first game, they lost 80-88 against Boston. Wade scored 13, Bosh scored 8, and LeBron scored 31. The Cavs' big 3 with K-Love, Kyrie, and LeBron, they lost 95-90 against the Knicks. The Knicks that year won 17 games. LeBron had 17, Kyrie had 22, K-Love had 19. The Warriors' Big Four first game, they lost to the Spurs 129 to 100.
Out. I remember that.
They got blown out. So nobody should be overreacting to this game. When the Heat lost, nobody questioned how great they are offensively. Look, the Nets are going to figure it out defensively because this roster's not done being constructed. Sean Marks is going to make moves, and I trust him to make moves. What I liked about the game is that Steve Nash is using Mike D'Antoni's philosophy of staggering minutes. I saw it last year with Harden and Russell Westbrook. You would have them in different times so you can maximize both players. With this Nets team, you saw times where Harden and KD were on the floor together. You saw times where KD and Kyrie were on the floor together. You saw times where Harden and Kyrie were on the floor together. And then you also saw moments where all of them were doing their own thing. He was staggering their minutes, and that's what I liked about it. For me, I'm not worried. This is nothing to worry about. We'll really know what the Nets are like 10, 15 games into the season and after they make more roster moves.
Yeah, just what you guys said. The three of those guys, any given night, could average 30 points, get 30 for anybody. So I'm not really worried about them. Just what Riff said on the effort is just like it just wasn't there. But, as the season goes on and it progresses, they will adjust because as athletes and great people, that's what they do. They will adjust. And I think they're going to be fine. And that's really it.
I gave Steve Nash credit in the beginning because he deserved credit. I thought he did a good job staggering the minutes. And that's a tough thing for any coach to do with three players of that caliber. But one thing that really did concern me, and this is my biggest concern for the Nets moving forward, bigger than even the defense, and I get it. He's only 16 games into his career. I'm trying not to be too hard on him. But with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, James Harden came into the game with KD, Kyrie, Joe Harris, and Jeff Green, and Steve Nash went on autopilot. It was unbelievable. Like from 8 minutes through the last second of the double overtime period, there was not a single substitution. And I get it, you want your guys out there in winning time, but at some point, especially with Kyrie his first game back, James Harden still getting into the swing of things, getting into shape, for just getting here to Brooklyn, KD coming off the Achilles, to have those guys out there for 50 minutes each is, I don't want to say irresponsible, but it's probably not smart at this point in the season. And when you look at the bench, I understand they didn't play well, but Bruce Brown has been a guy who's been great for them this season. Every game that in games that he's played 20 minutes or more, they're 6-3. They have a losing record. When he doesn't, he's got to get more minutes somewhere or another. Landry Shamet, even like in the regular season, you got to count on him to give you minutes. He didn't play he didn't even get his sweatsuit off. You got to be able to count on the guys on that bench a little bit more. And then other things that concern me, like Colin Sexton getting to hit the game-tying three, and I believe it was either in regulation or overtime because you don't foul.
I think regulation.
You don't foul. Like in that situation, to me, it's a no-brainer. I always foul in that situation because you can only get burnt by not fouling.
I hate teams that do that.
I hate it. I hate watching it.
I do it in 2K.
I hate watching it, but it's the strategy to win the game. And I'll give him a pass on that, but then in double overtime, Colin Sexton came down and scored on 5 straight possessions, no timeout. And then you call a timeout after he scores on 5 possessions, and it's kind of like you just watch the game down the drain. So it's just decisions like that I've been seeing pretty much all season long. He did it in a Memphis game earlier in the season where he left Jarrett Allen on the bench for 2 extra minutes, pretty much cost us the game. I know you were watching that game because we talked about it.
The Hawks one?
The Grizzlies one.
Oh, no.
Where he left Jarrett
I
Allen
remember
on
the Hawks one we were talking about where he had he had DeAndre Jordan in the game instead of Jarrett Allen.
So it's just been questionable decisions for him all season long, and I get it. He's getting into the flow of things. I'm not saying fired Steve Nash. He'll figure it out.
So if I'm not mistaken, because we're both Nets fans.
What the hell?
We just got somebody in free agency, right?
Yes, Norvell Pell. I was gonna say
Norvell Pell. He's a shot blocker. They got.
Did you really just say that? You really tried to.
You look at my sweater. This is what I'm gonna say. I don't know. I know that he's a shot blocker. That's his reputation. But I think the Nets still should go after JaVale McGee, Bismack Biyombo, or Nerlens Noel.
You guys also got that trade exception from Dinwiddie's injury, too.
5.7 million, I believe. And they're definitely going to use it. They have until April 19th, and they're not done yet.
Out for the year, right?
That's the thought right
You
now.
just
See, for me,
he
though,
might be back playoffs.
This is the problem I had with the Nets against the Cavs in the minutes, the minutes distribution. I don't think the Nets bench is bad. Like, I don't. I know people talk about depth a lot. I don't think this Nets bench is bad. We've seen this same Nets bench play in the bubble and do well.
Exactly.
I would say this. I don't think it's bad depending on who's out there.
Like, I don't think Chios is a bad player. I don't
in
know.
regular season, definitely not.
I don't know.
Tyler
I don't know
Johnson.
if he should get minutes, but I know for damn sure that Bruce Brown should get more minutes. Landry Shamet should play, and you should have a backup point guard outside
Tyler Johnson.
Yes, I think he's pretty good too. Like, you have guys. I don't know why Steve Nash is relying on KD, Harden, and Kyrie so heavily. Maybe he wanted to see how they all played together, and that's why he played them so much. But
He played it like a playoff. He
Yeah.
literally played it like a playoff game.
It felt like a playoff game.
So are you worried about them defensively, like going forward, or do you think it was just a bad game?
I'm not worried. I'm worried about the effort more than anything. It's just the effort on defense. Because, like, if you watch the game, they were just going. There were stretches where they were just letting the Cavs score off easy. Even I can go back to the Bucks game. I know Kyrie didn't play, but there were stretches in the Bucks game where they were just getting open backdoor cuts and open cuts to the basket. It was just. It's more for the Nets. It's just effort on defense. I don't think they put the effort because they put in so much. They exert so much energy on the offensive end, and their goal in most games is you guys can't stop us, or we're just gonna outscore you. Forget the defensive end. I think they have the players like TLC can play defense. Bruce Brown is a great defender. KD is a great defender. DeAndre Jordan, for stretches, he can be a rim protector and a great post defender. So I think Harden at times, if he puts some effort, he can be a good defender. I think only Kyrie would be the guy, but you can still put some effort and get it. The goal for the Nets is, can they get defensive stops for a stretch of time and then turn the game into a big lead? That's really what it is for them. And I think that's just effort.
It doesn't really concern me. Like, people, it's definitely a concern, but people are making it out to be a much bigger issue than it should be. And that's the same thing that happens with all great teams. People will nitpick anything and turn it into a much bigger deal than it is. But when you look at it, like Riv said, you go down the roster, you have at least solid defenders in most positions. And they're, like you said, they're not done yet. Sean Marks is going to go out. There's a bunch of great defenders still on the market. A couple of them that were former Nets. Amon Shumpert was with the team last year.
I would love Shumpert
Carroll,
on the Nets.
Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, all guys who could come in and play maybe not elite level defense, but really high level defense, really high effort guys that would make big contributions to this team, at least in the regular season. You mentioned a couple center names. I believe they have 2 roster spots. So, they still have work to be done, and I think whoever they add, it's not just going to be a roster filler. It's going to be somebody who's going to come in and really impact this team, especially in the regular season. But, you mentioned it. You look at this team, and there are definitely guys that should be getting more minutes. I want to see how he handles it moving forward, because I'm sure he's seeing what we're seeing. You can't keep those guys out there for that amount of minutes. You're going to burn them out for the time you really do need them.
No, yeah, Shamet has to play. I know he's struggling from the 3, but he's a guy that you have to get out there because he can hit the 3.
And he was actually playing pretty decent before last night. I know the Knicks game, he got hot, hit a couple shots, and the game before that, he hit a couple shots right at the end. So, I want to keep him in that rhythm. Get him on the court making shots because you need him in the regular season just to take minutes, if nothing else.